It's Saturday morning, you slept in, no alarm, no rush, you're free. The whole weekend stretches ahead like an empty field, and you think, finally I can rest. Finally I can just be. But you wake up tired, not physically, not like you need more sleep, just tired, like something inside you is still running, still working, still grinding away at something you can't name. And you try to rest. You really do. You watch something, you scroll, you sit, but you don't feel rested. You feel restless, like you're supposed to be doing something. Like rest itself is another task you're failing at. And by Sunday evening, you're exhausted again. Not from doing too much, from doing nothing, from trying to rest and not knowing how, from carrying something heavy that you can't put down, even when there's nothing to carry. I think most people live like this now. They wait all week for the weekend. They dream about it, count down to it, and then it comes and they don't know what to do with it. They're too tired to enjoy it, too wired to relax, too busy being tired to actually rest. And they blame themselves. They think if they were better at relaxing, if they were better at being present, if they just tried harder to enjoy their time off, they'd feel better. But they don't feel better. They feel guilty for wasting their precious free time being tired. There was a thinker who noticed this, Osho, and he said something that sounds simple but goes deep. He said most people aren't tired from doing too much. They're tired from living a life that isn't theirs, from spending their days being someone they're not, from performing, from pretending, from carrying a personality that doesn't fit. And that exhaustion doesn't go away on weekends. Because the problem isn't the schedule. The problem is the split. The gap between who you really are and who you're pretending to be. And that gap is exhausting. That gap is what drains you. Not the work, the pretending. Think about it. You go to work and you put on a face, a voice, a version of yourself that's acceptable, that's professional, that's likable. And you maintain that all day. You laugh at jokes that aren't funny. You agree with things you don't believe. You suppress reactions. You smooth over conflicts. You manage your face, your tone, your energy. And that's exhausting. Not because the work is hard, but because being someone you're not is hard. Harder than any job. And you do it for 8 hours, sometimes 10, sometimes more. And then you come home, and you think you can stop. You can finally be yourself. But you've been performing so long, you don't even know who yourself is anymore. The mask doesn't come off cleanly. It's stuck. You're stuck between the person you pretend to be and the person you actually are. And you're too tired to figure out which is which. There's this old story about a man who wore a mask every day for so long that when he finally tried to take it off, he realized it had grown into his skin. It had become his face. And he didn't know how to be without it. That's what happens to most people. They wear the mask so long it becomes them. And then they wonder why they're exhausted, why they can't rest, why weekends don't help. Because even when they're alone, they're still wearing the mask. Still performing. Still being the person they think they should be instead of the person they are. Osho would say this is the root of most unhappiness. Not that life is hard, but that people are living lives that aren't theirs. They're following scripts written by someone else, playing roles assigned to them, being who they were told to be instead of who they actually are. And the exhaustion you feel is your system trying to tell you something. It's trying to tell you that the split is too big, that the gap between the real and the performed has gotten too wide, that you're spending all your energy holding up a personality that isn't yours. But you can't hear it because you've been trained to ignore it, to push through, to keep performing, to keep pretending that everything is fine. And weekends become just another performance. Another place where you're supposed to be happy and relaxed and present. And you can't even do that, right? I think about this when I see people on vacation. They're supposed to be relaxed, supposed to be enjoying themselves, but they look stressed. They're checking emails, taking calls, planning the next thing. And even when they're not working, they're working. They're maintaining, they're performing vacation. They're being the person who has a good vacation instead of actually having one. And it's funny in a sad way. We've gotten so good at performing that we even perform rest. We perform relaxation. We perform joy. And then we wonder why none of it feels real. why none of it actually restores us. Osho used to tell this joke about a man who goes to a therapist and says, "Doctor, I'm exhausted all the time. I sleep 8 hours, I eat well, I exercise, but I'm always tired." And the therapist asks, "What do you do for work?" And the man says, "I'm an actor. I play someone else every day." And the therapist says, "Well, there's your problem. You're tired from being someone you're not." And the man says, "But that's my job. That's what I get paid for." And the therapist says, "Yes, but you're doing it off stage too. You're acting all the time. You've forgotten how to stop." And I think most people are doing that. They're acting all the time. At work, at home, on weekends, in relationships. They're being who they think they should be instead of who they are. And it's killing them. Slowly, quietly, through exhaustion that never lifts. And the worst part is they don't even know they're doing it. They think this is just how life is. That everyone is tired. That exhaustion is normal. That weekends are supposed to be spent recovering from the week so you can do it all again. But Osho would say no. Exhaustion isn't normal. It's a symptom. It's your life trying to tell you something. It's trying to tell you that the person you're being isn't the person you are. That the gap is too wide. That you're spending all your energy maintaining a performance that's not sustainable. And until you close that gap, until you start living from who you actually are instead of who you think you should be, the tiredness won't go away. It'll just get worse, deeper, more ingrained, until you can't remember what it feels like to not be tired. I see this in myself sometimes. I'll have a free day, no obligations, no plans, and I'll feel this pressure to use it well, to be productive, to do something meaningful. And I'll spend the whole day trying to figure out what meaningful thing I should do. And by the end of the day, I've done nothing. And I'm exhausted from the internal conflict of trying to be the person who uses their time well, while also trying to just be. And Osho would probably laugh at that. He'd say, "You're even performing for yourself. Even when you're alone, you're still trying to be the good version of you, instead of just being you. And that's why you're tired. That's why rest doesn't work. Because you're resting as a performance. You're being the person who rests well instead of actually resting. And the way out isn't more rest. It's not more weekends, or more vacations, or more time off. The way out is dropping the performance. Stopping the act. Being who you actually are, instead of who you think you should be. But that's terrifying, because who you actually are might not be acceptable, might not be professional, might not be likable, might disappoint people, might lose you your job or your relationships or your status. So you keep performing, you keep wearing the mask, you keep being tired, because tired is safer than authentic. Exhaustion is safer than rejection. And you live your whole life in that safety, that comfortable, exhausting safety, and you call it being responsible, being mature, being realistic. But the tiredness never goes away, and weekends never help, because you're not really tired from work. You're tired from being someone you're not, and no amount of sleep fixes that. No amount of time off changes that. You're just tired on a couch instead of tired at a desk. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's just how it is. Maybe we all have to perform to some degree. Maybe complete authenticity is impossible. Maybe the mask is necessary. Maybe the gap is just the price of participation. And the tiredness is just what it costs to be part of society. But I think it helps to see it, to recognize that the exhaustion you feel on weekends isn't laziness, isn't lack of discipline, isn't failure to optimize your rest. It's just the cost of the split, the price of maintaining a personality that isn't quite yours, the weight of performing instead of being. And maybe seeing that doesn't change anything. Maybe you still have to perform, maybe you still have to wear the mask, maybe you still end up tired on weekends, but at least you stop blaming yourself for it. At least you stop thinking there's something wrong with you for not being able to rest. At least you see that the problem isn't your rest. It's your life. It's the gap between who you are and who you're being. And Osho would probably say that seeing is the first step, not to fixing it, but to living with it consciously instead of unconsciously. To knowing what you're doing instead of just feeling the exhaustion and not understanding why. It's Saturday morning. You woke up tired, and maybe now you know why. Not because you didn't sleep enough, but because you're tired from living a life that isn't quite yours, from being someone you're not, from carrying a personality that doesn't fit. And weekends don't fix that. Because the weekend is just another stage, another place to perform, another time to be who you think you should be instead of who you are. And maybe that's just how it is. Maybe that's the deal. Maybe we're all just a little bit tired all the time from wearing masks that don't quite fit. And we keep wearing them anyway because taking them off feels too risky, too vulnerable, too real. So we stay tired, we rest without resting, we have weekends without having them, we live without quite living, and we call it normal, we call it adult life, we call it just how things are. And Osho would probably just smile at that sad, knowing smile, and say yes, that's exactly what people do. They exhaust themselves being someone they're not and then wonder why rest doesn't work. And they keep doing it, because they don't know any other way, because the alternative is too frightening, because authenticity feels like death. So they choose exhaustion, they choose the mask, they choose the performance. And they live their whole lives tired. And maybe that's just the truth. Uncomfortable, unresolved, but true.